Hello everyone, this is an open letter to Behavior Interactive from myself and the Xenomorph community. Over the weekend I reached out to you guys over my socials to ask the question, what does Xenomorph still need? After reverting the heavy nerf that almost came earlier this year, Xenomorph actually got a lot of quality of life changes that helped the character on both sides, both as and against. This put the character almost in a perfect spot, but for some reason the character still has a very low play rate, and a lot of people still don't enjoy facing the Xenomorph, so I tried to conjure up with you guys our collective ideas on how we can improve this situation. And through our collective brainstorming, I feel like we finally nailed down the final steps to perfecting the Xenomorph in Dead by Daylight. A brief overview of what people want to see on both sides are as follows. Nerf the flame turret motion sensors, collision pass for the tail, counterplay to double turret setups, killer prop priority for control stations, easier use of flame turrets, more exaggerated tell for the tail attack, and a global sound cue for the power charge. This, I specifically focused on changes that could be realistically implemented in a PTB and then in a live update, omitting grainer changes that would require a full rework, something like face huggers, removing the flame turrets entirely, dual functionality for standing mode and crawler mode, stuff like that. I do have a wonderful rework concept on this channel by Abyssal, who used to go by Smug, so go check that out if you're looking for something that is an actual rework that I actually approve of. But like I said, this is an open letter to Behavior that if you want to make final changes to the Xenomorph to put them in a perfect spot and not really have to worry about them anymore, then these are the top changes that people want to see for the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph from the Alien franchise, it's known for its exceptional stealth, sometimes hiding even in plain sight without being detected. The same could not be said for the Xenomorph in Dead by Daylight, whose position is given away to the survivors for a whopping 41 meters by the flame turrets. Inside the flame turrets are motion sensors that beep with increasing speed as the Xenomorph approaches. This pierces all stealth abilities in Dead by Daylight. This includes Undetectable, this includes Oblivious, this includes any Terria shrinking perks like Modern Abuse. All of these do nothing against the motion sensors. As a result, the Xenomorph stealth is only as effective as the survivors you are facing. If you face survivors who aren't very diligent about placing flame turrets, which they should be, then you can get away with stealth. Otherwise, survivors that are consistent with placing flame turrets will be able to hear you coming a mile away. This is really depressing for true fans of the franchise, as they don't really feel like they can be the apex stalker that they know the alien to be. This is also made worse by the existence of Springtrap and their door system. Springtrap is unable to be tracked as he moves through his door system and gets undetectable after exiting these doors. It feels like Xenomorph should definitely have stealth closer to this, and seeing it on a different character kind of feels bad. My solution: match the motion sensor range to the flame charge range. The Xenomorph has to be within 10 meters of a flame turret in order for it to begin throwing flames by default. In order to introduce stealth back to this character, we should match the motion sensor range to the flame charge range, this being 10 meters. That way the survivors cannot hear the Xenomorph coming until they are about directly on top of you. This will force the survivors to then make a choice: put the flame turret in a poor spot next to a generator or control station, but have information on if the Xenomorph's actually trying to sneak up on you, or you put the flame turret farther away in a good spot, like next to a really strong loop, but it'll be too far away to utilize for the anti-stealth function that it has. Furthermore, I believe it'd be awesome for the Xenomorph to retain the undetectable stats effect it gets in the tunnels for about 10 seconds or so after it exits, but that would just be the cherry on top. Back in the day, Bubba and Billy used to be extremely frustrating to play, as even getting close to the slightest bit of collision would cause your chainsaw to bump and lose precious seconds that you had in chase. To amend this, Behavior gave a collision pass to both of the chainsaw characters to make them feel smoother and less frustrating to play. The Xenomorph's tail attack has much the same issue and is in a very similar spot, where often the tail will snag on the slightest bit of collision, or in a lot of cases, invisible collision that you cannot even see. I feel like the most frustrating instances of this is when you aim directly at a survivor, but for some reason the tail attack prioritizes the object and the collision that's behind it, basically forcing you to miss even if you aimed perfectly. It's just really awful feedback to be given that you aimed perfectly, but you still didn't get the hit. My solution is that Xenomorph's tail attack should receive the same collision R&R that the chainsaw characters got. That way the tail attack feels more accurate and far less punishing. Whenever I am asked where Xenomorph should be placed on a tier list, I usually put them at B+ tier at the most. The reason for this is because the strongest counterplay option for the survivors, this being double turret setups, do not currently have any counterplay options from the Xenomorph. There is one mistake that if the survivors put the flame turrets too close together, the Xenomorph can strafe and break both at the same time, but that is an error on the survivors' end. Consistent, good coordinating teams should be placing flame turrets vaguely far apart, meaning that the Xenomorph cannot do this. And when they put them vaguely far apart like this, there is quite literally nothing the Xenomorph can do about it at all. They just have to lose their power if they want to chase in that area. Without counterplay to this, the Xenomorph will never ever break B tier. Even if we throw the strength conversation out here and only focus on how it feels awful because you absolutely have no answer to it playing the game. That's just naturally very frustrating, and especially considering that it's only a knowledge check to be able to use double turret setups anyways. My solution: flame turret destruction reward mechanic. My idea to fix this is when a Xenomorph successfully breaks a flame turret, their flame charge buildup should briefly be paused, only for a second or two, as a reward for successfully counterplaying the turret. This should be a good solution overall because this will allow Xenomorph to break double turret setups as long as they break the first turret. However, on the flip side, if survivors need to put flame turrets more spaced apart, it will still be a little bit more time consuming for the Xenomorph to go out of their way to break those flame turrets, making the play still worth it overall and making it more in line with single turret gameplay. It should be no secret to you that the implementation of killer props such as Plague's Fountains, Pig's Hat Boxes always play second fiddle to chest spawn locations. You see, killer props and chest spawns actually share possible spawn locations, and behavior confirmed themselves that chest spawns are going to always take priority over killer prop spawns. This usually isn't a problem. If you see a one extra spawn from like a cobbler offering or from a tarnished coin offering, you likely won't notice too much of a difference. However, during events or under multiple coin offerings, it gets pretty bad pretty quickly. You'll notice that your killer props will suddenly be spread all over the map in very inconvenient places, making it very, very hard for you to use. Xenomorph's control stations, their main tool for macro pressuring the map, function on this killer prop logic and suffer greatly from increased chest spawns. My solution: make killer props take priority over chest spawns. This is a really simple change, and it would be one that would not only help the Xenomorph's macro play, but also the powers of every killer like Sadako, like Blade, etc., whose powers also function off of this mechanic. The Xenomorph community has often been confused as to why even though the fact that Xenomorph has almost been out for 2 years now, that a lot of survivors still neglect to use the flame turrets. The answer I get back for this a lot is that flame turrets often don't feel good to use. One of the main factors involved with this is the 35% hindered and incapacitated status effects that apply while carrying a turret. This makes placing turrets feel sluggish, and so many players just kind of end up skipping out on using them entirely. My solution: lowered the hindered down to 15%, especially if we're going to be nerfing the motion sensor range down to 10 meters. It only seems fair that survivors should have less of a hard time placing the turrets. Lessening the hindered also encourage survivors to place flame turrets further away from generators and the control stations, which will help them be better placed for chases for the survivor, but also help the Xenomorph get more value out of the stealth aspect since they will be placed far away from where the survivors will be working on gens, control stations, etc. One of the biggest frustrations for survivors while facing the Xenomorph is the guessing game of the natural zoning that the Xenomorph creates. While in crawler mode, the Xenomorph's tail attack can be hard to anticipate. It only has a charge time of 0.3 seconds, and it can be really hard to know when to dodge. This was made better by behavior in the last big update to the Xenomorph, as they made the charge time up from 0.2 seconds and increased the volume of the tail charge sound effect, but I feel like it could use at least one more tweak. My solution: make the tail attack charge animation more exaggerated. Most survivors use visual cues when looking to avoid attacks. This is why if you see a survivor that's running dead hard, they're basically looking back at you the whole time because they're looking for a change in your animation in order to know when to activate the perk. To be in line with this typical counterplay strategy from survivors, I feel like the tail attack animation should be far more exaggerated. It actually does have one, it's just very, very subtle, and it's one of those things that because the charge time is only 0.3 seconds, like you blink and you miss it. So if this animation was far more exaggerated, even in that short time period, it'd be far easier to spot. Following up on the previous point, a lot of the time survivors find that the sun crawler mode activation can be kind of unfair at times, as they go from having to not worry about the tail attack at all to suddenly being hit by it. My solution to this: global sound cue for crawler mode. When you are playing as the Xenomorph, you get a brief sound cue before entering crawler mode. That way you can know you're about to have access to your tail attack without having to look down at your little charge bar at the bottom left side of the screen. I do not see why we can't make this sound effect play for both sides. That way survivors know when they have to switch up from normal M1 gameplay to something having to worry about the tail attack gameplay. Well, friends, those are 7 suggestions that both you and I came up with in order to push the Xenomorph into what we would consider more of a quote-unquote perfect state. Hopefully someone from Behavior catches wind of this, and hopefully at least some of these changes come through in an upcoming patch. Thank you so much for everybody that weighed in on all my socials for your ideas and concerns. Hopefully Behavior will hear us out with this. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to let me know that the kind of content I'm making is content that you like seeing. That's how I know that I'm doing a good job on the back end. And hopefully I made your day a little bit better today, friends. If I did not, I'll try to do so again in the next video. And if I don't see you there, well, you know, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.